The next thing, you didn't ask this one, but the people say Wahabi. Catch yourself before you say that. Stop yourself. The other word I told you is the Arabic word, so is this. It means to bestow, to give. Al-Wahhab, if you say Al-Wahhab, you must be very careful now. You just said Allah's name. Allah is Al-Wahhab. He is the bestower, the ultimate bestower. So you don't take Allah's name and play with it like that. What really happened over 200 years ago, there was a student of knowledge who memorized the Quran when he was not even a teenager yet. He studied all of the fiqh, jurisprudence of the Hanafi. Then he began to study others. And his father, who was a scholar, told him to stop. Just stay with what we have. He said, I want to learn the others. His father almost disowned him because of it. It was very upsetting. You know, don't do that. But he wanted to learn all of it so he could understand. And he began to learn quite a bit. He became convinced that he needed to learn more. And he discovered through this learning that the people of his time were making a grave mistake. I used the right word too, because they were worshiping at graves. They were literally going to graves and calling upon dead people to help them. Righteous people, good people, but they're dead. And even if they were alive, what could they do? They could only make dua for you. Nobody's got any magic. You ask Allah to solve these impossible situations and He can do it. And that's what he was telling the people. And some of those who were making money or getting good position in the community out of these grave worshiping deals took exception to his group because they came in and kicked over all of these monuments on these graves. And of course they had no evidence to support what they did, so instead of dealing with the rationale of why don't you look at what you're doing is wrong, instead they labeled his followers as Wahabi. Why? Because they couldn't call him by his real name. His name was Muhammad, and they would have had to say they're Mohammedans. And no Muslim would do that anyway. So they call him Wahabi because his father was Abdul Wahhab. So he was Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, and he wrote a book called Kitab al-Iman. The book, if you read it and take the cover off and you don't know who wrote it, you'll say, this is a great book. It's very good about the belief in Allah is one and the teachings that come with it. It's kind of like a workbook. It just has a few verses or something and then tells you to go look up the rest of it. And it was given to some scholars who were attacking and saying, these Wahhabi people, so and so on. So what do you think about Kitab al-Iman? It says, it's a bad book, don't read it. It's okay. So they gave him the book without the cover on it. Didn't tell him. This is a scholar. I'm not going to tell you who. Big scholar. Current. He read it and he loved it. He said, this is the aqidah of a real Muslim, the belief system of a real Muslim. And when they said, well, here's the cover for the book, and he went, huh? And he said, astaghfirullah, I made a mistake. Big mistake. All of us need to understand that whenever somebody doesn't want to admit their mistake, it's a lot easier to point and say, he's a Wahhabi. They're so-and-so. They're such and such. Rather than admit what? And we're going to go back and look again at what we said in our speech. The king has no clothes. Ooh. All of us make mistakes. Just admit it. What is the big deal? Only Allah is free of mistakes.
Okay. There's a question here. There's a question here that says, what advice would you give someone who starts to label you a Wahhabi, etc., especially in a conversation about fiqh issues in which there is a disagreement? Yes, this is a classic ploy of the innovator. The innovator, when you get into a discussion, they will very often, instead of responding to the discussion, they will start calling you names. In fact, of course, this is a sign of nifaq. This is a sign of hypocrisy. The Prophet ﷺ said, there are 4 signs of a hypocrite. Whoever has one of them, he has a branch of hypocrisy. Whoever has all of them, he's a complete munafiq. When he speaks, he lies. When he makes a promise, he breaks it. When he's trusted with something, he betrays it. And when he argues, he does it in a rude and licentious manner. So this is one of the qualities of nifaq. And of course, a person who is upon innovation is upon misguidance. And this of course is something, a type of sickness that takes them from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. So often they will start calling you names. Oh, you Wahabi. Now what I usually say is, what is a Wahabi? I just say, what's a Wahabi? And you know, believe me, most of the time they don't know. They have no idea. They've just learned this term to throw at you when they hear certain things. They say, well, I don't know what's a Wahabi. What's a Wahabi? You see, I follow Allah and His Messenger and the pious companions and all of the scholars who follow their way. That's what I'm upon. Is that a Wahabi? I don't know. So most of the time you'll find brothers and sisters, they've got no idea what a Wahabi is.
Okay, where are we up to? What do you reply with if anyone called you or labels you as a Wahabi? Who's going to tell me? What do you reply? Abdullah. Ya Abdullah. If someone comes and labels you as a Wahabi, what would you say to him? Or what would you say to her? Okay. You don't get a big sledgehammer and just flog him? Huh? There are a lot of Muslims that would love to do that, believe me. Is that what you would do? What would you do? Okay, you ask him for the definition first. What else you would do? Huh? Okay, so are you a Wahabi? Would you agree to it? What would you do? What would you say to this person? You know, obviously this person is ignorant. Otherwise he would not call you that. But the ignorance needs to be relinquished, destroyed, fixed up, rectified. So what would you do? Say, ya akhi, ya ukhti. Don't go crazy and angry and this and that and start yelling. No. Do it with a nice way, with wisdom. I'm not a Wahabi. What does Wahabi mean in the first place? Where did you get it from? Why do you use it? Explain to people. Teach people. Don't be harsh and so say, yes, I'm a Wahabi. You're an innovator. I'm going to flog you right now. No. That's destruction. We want to better ourselves, not detriment ourselves. Correct? So explain and teach. Fair preaching with wisdom. That's the only way, insha'Allah ta'ala, to a good, prosperous da'wah, da'i. So clarify the situation to that person.
Allahu Akbar, Allah.
Question, do we need to follow any madhab?
Okay. Do we need to follow any madhab? The first we need to understand what a madhab is. Madhab has different meaning. Originally the meaning of a madhab means an opinion. Okay, so my madhabi on this point, for example, is my opinion on this point is so-and-so. Okay, the opinion I follow on so-and-so is this point. That's originally what the word madhab used to mean. Okay, but later on people started to say a madhab as a school of thought. Okay, and don't be confused. Madhab does not mean the opinion of Abu Hanifa anymore. Hanafi madhab does not mean the opinion of Abu Hanifa. Shafi'i madhab does not mean the opinion of Imam Shafi'i. Okay? Nor the maslaq as well is different. When you have the later scholars, sometimes they have a different opinion or particular school within the school. The madhab, by the meaning of a school of thought, is a compilation of all works by all scholars that follow a particular usul of a scholar. So for example, all Hanafi scholars that follow the usul of Imam Abu Hanifa, the foundations that Imam Abu Hanifa laid down, okay, all of those scholars have books, all of those books put together, they make the Hanafi madhab. Okay? And even within the Hanafi madhab, you have people that have different opinions. Okay? This Hanafi scholar says it this way, that Hanafi scholar says something completely opposite. You can have that as well. And not all of them have the same aqidah as well. Okay? Not all of them have the same aqidah as Abu Hanifa, or the same opinion as Abu Hanifa. Many of them have different opinions. Abu Hanifa never used to believe in prayer for the rain, because the evidence didn't reach him. But later scholars, they obviously had more hadith available to them. So the Hanafi scholars of later times, they accept the rain prayer, the prayer for rain. Okay, Abu Hanifa put some conditions on Darul Islam that his students, they said, but it's not valid, and they agreed that it's not correct opinion. The same thing with Imam Shafi'i. Some of his students, they adopted opinion different from Imam Shafi'i. So that's why you shouldn't think that if I'm following a particular madhab, opinion of the Hanafi, the Hanbali position, don't think that means you're following the opinion of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. It's not always the case, especially in Aqidah. Because a lot of the scholars of the Hanafi, Shafi'i, Hanbali schools, they were not on the Aqidah of the four Imams. They had the Aqidah of the Murji'ah, of the Ash'aris, or the Maturidis. They changed. Okay? So this is where the danger is. When people start to follow the madhabs, they cannot distinguish between what was from the Salaf and what was from later times. So this is what we're talking about. So is there any evidence to follow a madhab? No. There's no command whatsoever in the Quran and Sunnah to follow a school of thought in this way. However, does that mean it's haram to read the books of the madhahib? No, and only a fool would say so. Because you cannot avoid those books. Those books are packed full of knowledge. It's packed full of knowledge. You can access the ilm, the knowledge of the Sahaba and the Salaf by reading those books, because the people better than us before and more knowledgeable than us have done the research and they put it down. So you can cut a lot of time by going to their books directly, and those who have the ability to do it, they can distinguish what is correct and what is not correct, and what verify and go back to the root to find out. So there's no harm in going to those books and reading those books, but don't think that everything you read in the books of the madhahib is going to be correct. Okay? Especially because if the scholar you're reading from is not from Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, if it's Ash'ari or Maturidi who makes some mistakes. Because some of them, they will reject the saying of the Sahaba, while Abu Hanifa accepted the saying of the Sahaba. Okay? Some of them will reject Ahad Hadith, whereas the Sahaba, the Salaf, accepted Ahad Hadith, the single reports. So you can see how things within a school of thought would be different. Okay? But the books are permissible to read, and honestly there's a lot of knowledge in them, and you can access them as well, especially for those scholars, the ulama. They can read them and they can distinguish between what is irja', what is not irja'. They can distinguish between what is Quran and Sunnah, what is added or taken away. Okay? But we don't have the mentality of, I must follow a particular madhab, only follow the opinion of a particular school. This is completely wrong. And what is completely haram is to have madhabism. When you have partisan, ta'assub to a particular school. I say, no, this school is the best, and look down upon all the others. Okay? And reject possibility of any other school to ever have anything correct. This is wrong. Okay? Or to say, whatever this school says is correct, even if the evidence looks like it's different. No, the scholar that looks to the schools of thought, he will read in order to access the knowledge of the Quran and Sunnah. And if he found the Quran and Sunnah is stronger in a different way, he will make his ijtihad and will follow what he believes is the haqq, is closest to the truth, and the understanding of the Sahaba, even if it opposes the school that he's mainly studying from. Okay? And for the layperson who cannot distinguish between that, he should ask the ulama, not try to be a play scholar and just read some books and try to do it himself. Okay? If Allah wanted you just to read a book, why not read the Quran? Okay? If you want to read a book by so-and-so scholar and say, look, my ijtihad is to read this book and I follow whatever it says, read the Quran and follow whatever it says. It's much better. But if you don't know and do not have the tools to understand the Quran, then ask the ulama that you trust for your deen and let them make the ijtihad and distinguish what is correct in the books and what is not. Okay?
Allah